on the Masked Man Show.
And Ben Cruz here. Come kick it with me, Cal, and Brian on Tuesdays for Ringer Wrestling Worldwide, where we hit on the most interesting headlines and even react to some of Masked Man's and even your hottest takes.
Don't tap out, tap in to the Ringer Wrestling Show feed now on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
Worldwide?
Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Ringer WNBA show. I'm your host, Sirit Sohi. I am so excited for the episode we have coming up for you guys. We're talking to Pat Boylan, the play-by-play voice of the Indiana Fever, about the Caitlin Clark effect, about the Indiana Fever's success, the momentum that is building around her, around the WNBA in general. Really great conversation. And Costabile of the Chicago Sun-Times to talk about the Chicago Sky, their recent skid, the culture that they are trying to build on that team. And we're going to close it out with Nikias Duncan, the host of The Dunker Spot, one of the best basketball thinkers that I know. We'll talk about Asia Wilson, the Aces, the Lynx, and the playoff picture. So
30 seconds until minions spawn.
Let's get into it. All right, without further ado, our first guest is Pat Boylan, the play-by-play voice of the Indiana Fever, who was also ranked recently with his broadcast partner, Debbie Antonelli, as the #1 broadcaster for the WNBA by Offline, which is not necessarily the website name that you want to be giving you that ranking, but they do know their stuff. So congratulations, just one of the many members of the Indiana Fever lately that are piling up accolades.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I did have to explain to my wife this, fortunately, does not mean I was #1 most awful. It is actually some very nice praise, and we have brought Debbie Antonelli back this year. She was with our telecast for a long time and well before I got here, and we've added Kelsey Casper, and we have a great production crew. So really, this feels like a team award, and it's cool to get some recognition in what's been obviously just a thrilling season here.
You're just deflecting credit like Caitlin Clark here, making sure everybody's involved. Love to see it, man. Love to see it. But no, really, you guys do an awesome job. It's part of the reason I wanted to have you on. I'm really excited to talk to you. You have been in the center, the voice of one of the biggest stories in sports, Caitlin Clark's rookie WNBA season, which has recently included her winning Eastern Conference Rookie of the Month, Player of the Month, Kelsey Mitchell leading the East in scoring. Second in the WNBA since the break, behind only Asia Wilson. You got Caitlin leading the W in assists, all rookies in assists. It's been an incredible time. It feels like it's been a lot of fun to watch, and I think the thing that I keep going back to now, especially after the break, with the 8-1 start to the break, the 4th best in the league over that span, 2nd best offense, just everything firing off all cylinders. This energy, this ball finds energy, joy that's emanating around the team. It feels like the Iowa phenomenon has finally completely touched down in Indiana. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective as somebody who is in the city, who is around the team all the time, what's this been like for you? Have you had any holy shit, this is really, really real right now moments?
Yeah, before I answer that, I want to make it very clear that, the WNBA and the Indiana Fever too, even though times have been a little tough here for a while, it's been in a really good place for a long time now. And the upward trajectory has been there, and it's been there for this league, and it would be there with or without Caitlin Clark. But just her arrival has turbocharged all of that. And of course, nowhere is that felt stronger here than in Indianapolis and in Indiana. And with the Fever, have I had one of those moments? I have like 10 per day. I mean, I feel like I just walk around scraping my jaw off the floor 24/7, and it's so cool. I think I've had this just smile on my face now for like 4 months because to have this level of attention and recognition that in a lot of ways probably should have been there before this moment, but is here now because of just the spectacular arrival of Caitlin Clark. It's just been so thrilling to be a small part of what's going on right now. You know, you go into our building every single night, and it's completely sold out, and not the sellout that we used to have, which was we're at the balcony. It's every seat, and you walk around Indianapolis a few hours before a game, like we're getting ready to have here, and you see 22 jerseys and gear at the level of like Indianapolis sports history, like Reggie Miller and like Peyton Manning. And it's like a light switch flipped one day, and all of this changed so dramatically. And you know, it's just been so gratifying to be a part of the ride here. And you touched on it. I mean, she's been the whole package. I mean, everything on the floor has been spectacular, but also just witnessing how she handles every single challenging question that's been thrown her way with grace and with intelligence, and she never says the wrong thing. And it's great to know that this isn't ending, right? I mean, usually as the regular season is coming to an end, at least the last few years, we've been getting ready to close up shop, but we know the playoffs are back here for the first time since 2016.
Yep. Clinched a playoff spot. Really special moment. It's just, it feels like, you know, to your point about maybe the credit should have been here before. Definitely, yes. But at the same time, there is this magnetism that she has. You know, I think it's just one of those inherent realities of anybody who's in public life is that some people, they have a way of just connecting, just capturing the public's imagination in a way that just makes you want to follow them. And Caitlin just has that, and that's the thing. It's really hard to describe, but you know it when you see it. And I think the thing that's been so fun and so interesting to watch with her, especially as you get more into the details of it. Yes, there is, you know, the play style, which I definitely want to get into with you, especially with how good they've been after the break. It's fun. She whips passes that nobody's ever seen before. There's a logo footage. There's just a style. She's a combination of so many different players that you've seen before that have, you know, captivated our imagination. Which, you know, I love playing that part of her game. If you ever want to get into that at any point as well. But the one thing that, you know, really strikes out to me with her is that she's just completely unafraid of what it's going to take to become the type of player she wants to be. And I think that's the core thing that has captivated us and has now translated, now that we're seeing that how quickly she is like traversing learning curve and capable of taking control on the WNBA stage in the same way that she was at Iowa. It's like all that investment is back again. It's like, can she do it? Can she achieve all this greatness that she wants to achieve? Like, the scope of her ambitions they're so great, and they're greater than proving her own individual greatness, which I think is really cool too. Like, I think at Iowa you felt this sense that she really wanted to put the team, the city on the map. Like, she was really invested in that, and you kind of see that same sense of purpose kind of coming across in Indiana too. There's a good chance they'll finish out strong. There's 6 of their next 7 games are at home. That feels like a bit of a reward for how crazy their start to the season was. All those games jam-packed into 20 days. And I'm kind of curious what you think about the playoff picture, because, you know, right now it's looking like they're either going to play the Minnesota Lynx or the Connecticut Sun. It feels like there probably just isn't enough time left in the season unless they run the table and the Storm lose out every game, basically, for them to sneak into that 5th seed. So it looks like they're going to be locked into that 6. The Sun and the Lynx are tied right now. The Sun hold the tiebreaker. I think both of those matchups are so compelling for so many different reasons. But I'm curious, is there a team that you would rather see? Is there a matchup just from a media, sports writer, like sports analyst perspective that you would be more excited about? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think I really need to go in and analyze that, and I think if you look at the playoff picture here over the last few weeks, and from the quote-unquote analyst perspective, I'm okay missing New York. The Fever have beaten New York, but I mean, they seem, look, they're loaded, and they seem on a mission. And I know that this has not been a typical regular season for Las Vegas, but the Fever have only beaten the Aces, I think, one time since they moved to Las Vegas. So that's also another team, look, back-to-back champions, all sorts of Hall of Famers all over the roster. If you don't play one of those two teams, I think you're in a position where you got a real chance at pulling off an upset. And I do think it would be an upset because they're going to be the road team. They're not going to get high enough to have home court advantage. And the way the playoff works is you got to win on the road to even have a chance to come back and play at home. Minnesota and Connecticut are both better laden teams with a lot of talent. And if you told me one of those two teams ended up in the finals, it wouldn't shock me at all. That said, I think they're fairly favorable matchup for Indiana. Indiana's beaten both of those teams already once this year. They're going to try to beat Minnesota a second time on Friday night. But I think they are winnable matchups. Will they be the favorite if they play there? No, I don't think so. They probably should be. Both those teams have had great years. But if you look at the Fever from June 1st to now, they're 17-8, which I believe is the third best record in the WNBA. So outside of the first 2.5 weeks in the just absolute insanity of the beginning of the season, the Fever have been playing at a Connecticut and at a Minnesota level. And I look at it, the question kind of reverse or flip. If I'm one of those two teams and I'm looking at potential opponents, I would have to say the Fever are at the bottom of that list, at least of potential teams that you could play in that first round series. So it's great to be talking playoff matchups. Haven't been able to do that in quite some time. And as the playoff picture gets a little more crystallized, I think we'll have a chance to maybe hone in just a little bit more specifically on those matchups. But I think the Fever have a great opportunity if they do end up in sixth, depending on really whoever they play.
Yeah, I personally I just think that it would be so much fun. Like the two best offenses in the W. My two favorite teams to watch, just because of the style of play, the passing, like all the, the links are impossible, honestly. Like, I think I would probably, if I was thinking about the Fever going forward, would rather see them play the Sun just because of how hot the links have been and like they make themselves completely unguardable. But I mean, the Fever, like it's just that would be a high-powered, high-octane offensive series. That's the one that I want to see. But you mentioned the crazy start to the season. I really want to dig into how we got to now, basically, because I think that there were a lot of factors. But I want to start with how bleak things looked, because I think with how good things are right now, it's really and I just don't think it can be understated how quickly and dramatically things have changed. General vibe around the team, like we're talking about, those first 9 games of the season, you have there's a 1-8 start just in general, but you have a lot of stuff going on. It's everybody's dealing with this unprecedented level of attention. Aaliyah Boston, she misses a game-tying layup against the Sun. She has to delete her social media because she's getting death threats, and she just needs to take a break from all of this sports negativity. Every day is a different culture war. Everybody wants Christy Side's head. She looks... I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe stress is just Christy Side's general posture, because even with the wins, she is squatting just as much. Her head isn't raised just as much. She's just maybe that's just the way that she operates in general. But it just felt like there was so much pressure around the team, so many eyeballs, so much scrutiny, and the simple fact of nobody likes losing. Like let alone Kate Sparks, who's never lost that many games in her career. Like I'm just curious what your experience of watching the team was in that moment. If there's anything that you would say, just being around them that was important in helping them pull themselves out of that place. Aside from, we'll talk about some of the common sense stuff, because I do think there are just like as extraordinary as this has been. The reasons have been kind of ordinary, but just was there anything behind the scenes going on? Was who was kind of pulling it?
Oh, don't go.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, you're right in that it was just an absolute pressure cooker. I mean, it was every eyeball in America, it felt like, on this team that everybody thought was going to take off, and then all of a sudden you're 1-8. I mean, Christy Sides has, I think, overcome as much adversity as any coach in recent memory that I can think of, any sport. And you think about her being coach of the month here as we're talking, and then go back to some of the vitriol that she was getting back in late May. I mean, the turnaround there simply in itself is stunning. And it was one of those situations where, you know, I was on a million different radio interviews here in town and nationally, and I kept trying to stress, listen, you cannot evaluate this team fully right now, because all they have done is play just about every single of the best teams in the WNBA. Almost all of those games were on the road, and with a team that's brand new to each other. Your leading scorers, say after Kelsey Mitchell, are all first, second, and third-year players. You're going to have to give this thing and the schedule normalizing before you truly judge them. Yet, of course, we know that's not how sports works, fandom works. Now, you get judged based on what's happened, and oftentimes, you know, that is exaggerated in the beginning of the season because it's the only thing we have to go off of. And I was just kind of cautiously optimistic during all of that because, look, Caitlin Clark's playing at a much higher level now than she was then. But even in those early games, she was showing some real signs of stardom to come. I've seen what Kelsey Mitchell can do for a long time. We saw what Leah Boston could do last year and have seen it in college. So I was optimistic that this would turn around from the perspective of the pressure cooker was going to relieve itself. And the hard part about it is you can't control any of that, right? I mean, you can't control getting 11 games in 20 days, playing Connecticut 3 times, New York twice, Vegas once, Seattle 2 or 3 times. I mean, it was just a murderer's row of the early schedule, but everything always balances out. It's a schedule. Everyone's is about the same by the end of the season. And so now we're seeing that as the schedule has normalized and gotten a lot easier, the Fever have taken advantage. But you know, there was a moment in Connecticut, and I think this was maybe loss number 9. I think it was that moved them to 2 and 9, if I'm remembering correctly. They got blown out in the first half. The game was over by halftime. But in that game, Christy Sides, you know, decided to sit most of the starters for a lot of the second half, but left Aaliyah Boston in there, and Boston got going. And if you remember, she had struggled in the early few weeks of the season, and from that moment on, Aaliyah Boston will be Aaliyah Boston of old. Going from that game forward, she was terrific. And it was almost like that is what was needed to relieve pressure on everybody else. You know, Caitlin's gotten going, Kelsey's gotten going, the schedule's gotten easier. And I think Christy did a really good job of, when times were tough early in June, I mean, there was a practice where they got done early and they just went and played pickleball. And there was a time when during the Olympic break that they went and played baseball. And just to try to relieve some of that pressure that everyone was feeling. And I think that was really needed at the time. And you know, the other thing that I think shouldn't be understated here or can't be overstated about this turnaround is, for example, in the NBA, you get 82 games. You get months to kind of figure things out early on. Lynn Dunn, one of my favorite phrases to describe a WNBA versus an NBA season came from Lynn Dunn years ago. Who's now the GM, but she was the coach at the time. And she said the NBA is a marathon and the WNBA is a sprint. And it's so. And so, if you think about the turnaround the Fever had, and they've been afforded half the amount of time to do it that an NBA team would, I think it makes it even more impressive. And it is a start to go back and look at the first 3 weeks of the season, and to look at them now. But I think, you know, really everybody on that roster, the coaching staff, deserves credit for getting it turned around, because I think it was easy to imagine the Fever looking like they do now, but maybe not this year. And for them to look like that this year, right now, it is really significant, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved hearing Casey Sides talk about Joy. I think it was, I can't remember what it was now, man. It was a couple weeks ago, but she had a press conference where, you know, she was just saying it was like, there just wasn't the joy that she wanted. She wanted to emphasize that, and it was just kind of hard to string that out of the fatigue and the pressure of
Shut
those
down.
games. And that is so
An enemy has been slain.
On the
An
roster,
ally has been
just finish it
slain.
off, just saying, like, I've never been more proud of a group player. And I thought that was really interesting. It kind of gave me the sense that, like, regardless of what happened in terms of what it meant for the win total for that season, that run really seemed to galvanize them over the long term, and like almost maybe culminated in the game against the Sun earlier this week, where Chelsea Mitchell going into it is basically saying we are not getting better. Like that is the one thing, and they pull off their first win against the Sun all season. I think their first win since 2021 against the Sun. This team that kind of has an ability to push them around, get them out of their offense. Make them work so they can get into these actions, and like the fact that they're able to now win these types of games is really, really encouraging, because like you're going in thinking, okay, like, you know that the game that Clark goes off and the shooting is hot, that things are gonna go well, and that when her passes are hitting on target, like those are the games they're winning these games now where they don't necessarily have all of that going. But they're finding ways to grit it out, and I just think that, like, alongside that start, many changes in these starting lineups, I think, have been so important, because it feels like they have found this perfect balance now with Lexi Hull and Temi Fikar in the starting lineup, like, as far as like this mix of defense, shooting, size, cutting, transitions. Like, I love what Temi does with the pace every time she's in the game. Loved it earlier when she got hurt. She wasn't available, and now, like, it just feels like they are hitting on all cylinders. You need this alchemy as a starting lineup, I think, with live in basketball. Like, you kind of have to have multiple elements going, and they need to have all of the elements that allow them not only transition as one, but also be really good in the half court. Like, I feel like Aaliyah Boston is that sort of the yin to the yang of all of like of the running. She just it has been incredible. Never and honestly, Melissa Smith too. It just feels like somebody that we haven't really talked about a lot as a collective, in terms of deserving credit for sacrificing. It feels like she has just turned herself into like this roving potential dribble handoff candidate that also just creates a lot of gravity at the rim, and has been rebounding and blocking shots, and just probably has sacrificed and adapted more than anybody on the team. And it's really fun to see it all come together. Like that's why we're here, right? It's why we watch this.
No question, and I think your comments on Alyssa Smith are absolutely true, and I think maybe the most underrated storyline of this Indiana Fever season is Aaliyah Boston's ability to do just that, because there have been stretches where the Fever has needed her to go be the 18 and 10 and full block type of player, and then there have been stretches where Kelsey Mitchell is on another planet, and Caitlin Clark's doing her thing, and the Fever haven't needed her to be quite as involved offensively, and her ability to be permeable, what the team needs that night, and to provide that. In the Fever's last game, she statistically was fantastic. Double-double, 14 rebounds, was really good defensively at the rim. She's a great swing setter. The Fever needed her to beat that to beat the Sparks, but in Dallas, and in some games recently, as Kelsey Mitchell has caught fire, the Fever haven't needed her to be a big-time scorer, and that has not been a problem. That has caused no issue, and the way that she can kind of transform, I mean, she's just the ultimate big from that perspective, in that whatever you need from her, she can provide it. It's not going to be a problem with her. She's not going to cause any sort of locker room issues. She's just going to go out there and do what the team needs, and sometimes that's only taking 5 or 6 shots per game to defend the rim. And sometimes it's, we're going to toss you the ball 20 times on that low block, and you're going to, spin your defender into a cyclone, and you're going to dominate And I think without having a player that's not just willing, but capable to do that, the Fever are not here right now. She's been the one, I think, that has adjusted the most game in and game out. And there's an intelligence to that, too. It's an understanding, and it's a picking up on this is the type of game. So early on against Los Angeles, they were double teaming on the perimeter. They were sending all sorts of pressure. And so it was one-on-one down the post with Aaliyah. We're going to let Aaliyah eat. And she did, and she was fantastic. And then there are games where, that maybe they send a couple of bodies her direction and Kelsey's hot. They don't need her to do that, and that's not an issue. So I would say that is the most underdiscussed story of the 2024 Indiana Fever season here so far. We've seen all of the terrific displays from far. I think they've never time Boston too, and that's has been such a glue piece to all of this. It's Boston's ability to know what the need night in and night out. I think that's been just absolutely massive for this group.
And look, we're talking about somebody who was a #1 pick, who was a Rookie of the Year last year. Like, this is not an easy thing to do. For someone who's been in that position, who was the center of the center of the franchise, to have somebody like Caitlin Clark come in. It's also something that I've seen some of her guys talk about too, is her leadership as well. Her ability to kind of be the vocal yet like soft-spoken person in that locker room. I'm curious if have you been able to bear witness to any moments like that where she's kind of just helped them, because it feels like Caitlin in particular, like she's talked about how much it helps her to have somebody like Aaliyah around, and you love seeing their sort of like their pregame ritual of like, you're gonna play amazing because you are amazing. Like,
Yeah, I think the balance in personalities there is really noteworthy because she's easy going and a great speaker and all that, but you get her on the floor, she's extremely tense, she can be tightly wired, and she's just making it great, right? So it's a switch that she puts on, and don't get me wrong, like, Aaliyah can turn into that too. I'm not trying to say that she doesn't have the killer instinct, yes, she does, but you were mentioning Christy Side a little bit earlier here in this podcast, and how she's very intense also, right? Like, you never have to wonder what Christy's thinking. You never have to wonder what Christy's feeling. She's running up and down the floor, hands in the air when something's going good, crouching down with her foot when something's going bad. There was a moment, and unfortunately facing which game it was within the first 10 to 12 of the season, and mostly during the stretch where things were not going all that well. And at one point, Aaliyah just kind of came over, and I think she could tell that Christy was really fired up and taking, a lot of pressure and just trying to persevere through all of that. And Aaliyah just came over. Never do you see this. I thought such a cool moment. The player came over to the coach, and she put her arm around her and basically said something to the effect of, "We're going to be all right, coach."
Right.
He talked about that after, saying it was just, it was what I needed in that moment. And for a player to be able to deliver that is really significant. And for a player in her second season, people forget this too. Aaliyah Boston's young for her grade or her draft class. She's also 22. So Aaliyah's 22 and Caitlin's 22, and Aaliyah's only about 3 or 4 months older than Caitlin. So yes, it is her second year. Yes, she is, grade-wise and all of it, and draft class-wise a year older. But she's basically Caitlin in terms of time on this planet, right? And I mean, just assuring you that she has been able to bring this team. One of the biggest things that any sport sometimes struggle with is not having enough leadership and not having somebody that can do that. Now, I do think the people have that's really that is impactful in that regard. But some of their young players are just wise and mature beyond their years, and I think Aaliyah's personality really just meshes well with Caitlin's and Christy's, and Kelsey is a little different too. Kelsey when she came into the WNBA, was so soft-spoken, and she still is soft-spoken, but she's kind of found her voice a little bit too in all of this. And so it's been fulfilling to see just all of these different players, because for the first time only a few months ago. I mean, that's so easy to forget that too. This isn't just a video game. Like, it takes time to gain chemistry. It takes time to get to know your teammates and to figure out how each other works on and off the floor. And I think if there's one theme of this season here so far to me, it's just how quickly all of that has progressed.
That's such a great moment. It takes so much emotional intelligence. It takes so much awareness, like, and to also, you know, she's trying to find her own game to still be able to look outside of herself and see that someone else on her team also needs a pickup. And it's her coach of all people. It's just that's really cool to see. And yeah, it's like, it almost feels like she's like the release valve for this team. Like, not only on the court, you know, like passing out of these traps, but also off the court, just being like that sort of the cool wind in a hot day, sort of thing. This is also, you know, to the point of how quickly all of this comes together. How quickly it's really cool, and I appreciate you coming on here and just shedding some more light, giving us some insight on Caitlyn and the Fever, and this incredible run that you're kind of in the center of. You know, I guess, you know, I hope you have fun with the rest of it. And before I get you out of here, like, is there anything you want to plug?
No, not really. I appreciate the time here very much. It's been a fun conversation to have, and I guess, you know, just like we started this conversation, like, I'm pinching myself every day. This has been so cool, so gratifying to be a part of. You know, I think if I'm fortunate to do this line of work for another 30, 40 years, I mean, this will be something that will always go down as one of the most thrilling moments of my career, and just personally getting to witness all this firsthand, getting to have all this. I think I've done more interviews in the last 2 days than I have in some seasons. So what it all boils down to for me is it's just so cool seeing this league get this type of attention. It's been so sorely deserved, and hats off to Caitlyn Clark for being the type of person and player and working on her game behind the scenes when no one was watching to allow this moment to come. And we're just getting started. I'm so excited to see where all of it's going to go the rest of the season and for years to come.
Thanks, Pat. And stick with us, and we'll be back after the break. We're going to be talking to Annie Chicago Sky. Alright, next we've got Annie Costabile from the Chicago Sun-Times. She is a great reporter. She was with the WNBA. Chicago Sky, which has been one of the most fascinating games this season. Open up you know, had Angel Reese Smith, has also both coming in. Everybody assumed this was going to be a rebuild here, and Kennedy Carter really gets it going. And it seems like they're starting to not only win games and guys for a playoff spot, but build identity. It's almost like that good system, not the own style of confidence and grit, but also togetherness. And it felt like there was never a bunch of pretty misunderstood players coming together under the weather screen and creating this organic culture. And then Marina Mabrey got traded, and then there was a bunch of, you know, Twitter drama, and then, you know, you had some players, former players coming out saying things about the franchise, and you get some injuries, potential COVID, just really the thing with the Chicago Sky skid after all of that, they are 1-8 coming out of the Olympic break, is that it feels like it has so many different culprits that